So thank you everyone for joining us for our Brown Bag webinar. My name is Mark Dempsey. I'm here at the National Convergence Technology Center at Collin College in North Texas. If you would, for those who haven't done it yet, please put your name and your school in the chat box. That's how we can kind of know who's here. We have a lot of folks on the call, so we're gonna keep everybody muted. But use that chat box also to send along questions and comments. So I think we may have time at the end to do some questions, and if so, we'll read those out to Matthew. All right. I think we're good. So with us today is Matthew Cloud. We're happy to have him. He, as an undergraduate at Texas A&M, Matthew created a company, Cloud Technologies, building systems ranging from positron emission to tomography, calibration, logistics systems for the second layer of the US network in the late 90s, and an initiative to understand the network of the human brain as a biomedical engineer to help those with strokes, TBI, pain, PTSD, and ADHD recover. Prior to his current role, Matthew was also the director of a DOL grant defining the IT pathways over the School of IT at the state level of Ivy Tech Community College of Indiana, with over 22,000 IT students and 150 faculty. Currently, he's the IT department chair for Ivy Tech Lake County campus. He serves on the governor's Cybersecurity Council, and he advises think tanks for the Federal Reserve's Board and the National Skills Coalition, building towards the National Center for AI. That's an impressive resume. So we're very happy to have Matthew here with us. He taught for us last summer at Working Connections, and we're glad to have him here again. So Matthew, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can share yours. Be sure to click those two buttons like we did, like we tested, so you can show your video if you'd like. And thanks for joining us. Very cool.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. As you can tell from my background, I can't decide what I want to do, right? I've been very blessed to follow a very interesting path in my life. So Mark, you've been a part of that. I see some others in here, Karen Stanton, and I'm sure there's some others along the way as I'm watching the names pull in that have been able to help build this type of collaboration across the US. And that's what I really find fun, not just working with students in the classroom, but how do we create better tools to help those students across the US. So thank you for giving this opportunity to speak. All right, so bringing practical AI tools. I have way too many titles, so part of my goal in all this is to help get more people interested in doing these things so I can hand off some of these hats to other people. That would be fantastic. So thinking about an overview of AI in the freshman year, how can we actually bring this in? There's actually a lot of tools that can make things accessible without any prior knowledge, such as AI for Oceans, AI with an Oracle, several different examples in there. And then we get a little bit more technical with AI machine learning with AWS, and how does that kind of really focus on middle skills AI at that point. So based upon the feedback that I've received from the faculty and the survey, thank you all for participating in that. Give me a little bit of guidance here, because those that know me know I tend to wonder, which that's just what I do, but it does come back. So we're going to focus on some of the tools. Normally people are thinking about with AI and machine learning, how to get into coding with Python, R, MATLAB, and other advanced tools. And that's what I've spent a large portion of my career. When we talk about building the second and third layers of the internet, I was designing a logistic system to help manage that, defining neural pathways in the brain and how do we redesign those neural pathways through therapy and monitor what's happening. I was using what we now call machine learning to make that happen. It was very deep into using MATLAB in that case for a great deal of it, but a variety of languages to fit the needs. The most recent one, if you really like getting that deep, that's more into Python and R. But frankly, most students at the community college level are not ready by the time they're done at the end of the second year to get into that. My hope is that by that third, maybe third, but at least by the fourth semester, that some will decide that math is not so scary and they can actually enjoy where it goes, instead of getting into these discussions as to which statistical method is best. I enjoy having those conversations at conferences, but and somewhat in the classroom, but that's not always the best use of our time to get into the practicality of it. So you can even start at the kindergarten level. So let's see if this will link out here to AI@code.org. That's one I didn't pull up already, but we think about artificial intelligence. There's actually stuff in here that's focused on the K-12 system. And so as you're recruiting people in, there's a number of things that focus on how you can do that. AI for Oceans is about really about 30, 45 minutes. Normally their stuff is geared around an hour, but you could have another 15 to 20 minutes about bias and ethics, and is the fish happy or sad, or is that really an angry fish looking at you? But you also step through the process of machine learning of categorization in a way that is fun and exciting for kids 8 to 80. And they're developing additional curricula, and even having Satya Nadella speaking throughout that, as well as a number of women, a number of different ethnicities throughout that. So it's a great way to show how people can become involved in a positive direction. So that's one place to start at a very basic level. And I usually, as I've taught this course out, we had a special topics course this past fall on AI concepts, and I decided after that course that course should really be 3 different courses. But the first half works really well at an introductory level. We started with it with this material here in the first week, and I even had some that have that are finishing up a PhD that were in that course, and students that were in their second year at college. So it was a very diverse group of students, and it worked really well. In fact, the students who had no prior knowledge of programming were doing better than others when we got deeper into the AI concepts, which I hope you'll understand better as we go through this. All right, so I talked about that. So people use AI more often than they realize throughout a number of different tool sets, from Alexa in the home to call centers, the Cisco call center with Morgan. We use them in real-time feedback. I was called into a conference with the FBI and the Department of Commerce for the at the Rolls-Royce facility in Indianapolis on espionage in academia, because we don't have enough U.S. citizens going into it. It's great to collaborate. We should collaborate with other countries and bring people in, but we need more U.S. citizens involved with that. And it's really the community colleges that can make the best impact on that. A lot of people don't understand how much we use of it. So when we're thinking about a freshman level, we want to limit the math, not eliminate it, but limit it and make it where it's more enjoyable and fun. The programming knowledge is not necessarily needed, as I'll show you. It can be. And how can we make it useful and fun and not problematic? I've been trying to use these tools in classes for about 3 years within our existing curricula, and it's only the past year that it's really begun to work well. Still, there are issues, and I'll talk about that here as well. As they see other things like Python and JSON, how it's used, they can build it out. But really the focus at an introductory level is about relationship building using UML. One of the sites I like to use is nomnoml.com. Plus, it starts out using a pirate for an example of a model. So it's fun, interesting, and you can change the language and see the impact on the use cases and UMLs as well immediately. So Oracle Academy. Oracle Academy is a great tool. It's free. You want to set up as an institution, not an individual, because you have to have the institutional access to be able to get Oracle Cloud Academy. And Oracle Cloud Academy is where it gets fun. Not that there's anything wrong with the Oracle Academy itself, but Oracle Cloud Academy gives you free access with $300 of credit to the Oracle Cloud and releases you from having to work with large virtual machines on a local system. It can take several weeks to get through that, but if you have issues, please reach out to me. Denise Hobbs runs that nationwide, and it is somewhat of a manual process on the Oracle Cloud Academy, and it can be for the institution depending upon the number of people applying from that institution. Once you have it set up, though, it's pretty quick. For faculty, it's longer. Students, however, are typically set up in a few days. So once you have your account set up, you set up your class a week in advance, you should be pretty golden for a student. As long as that student is not a faculty member and trying to use that email account for a student and a faculty member at the same time. Okay. The Oracle Digital Assistant, which I'll show you here as well, is intent-based, not flowchart-based. It does have a flow, but I'll show that example here in just a moment. And it goes into natural language processing, but you could develop your own machine learning algorithm. So as a student progresses in the program, they can see how they would use those tools. Often when we teach about machine learning, typically, or math, we focus on the methodology, but not the practical application. In this case, we're focusing on the practical application, and the statistical knowledge comes afterwards. They understand why you would do it. It's kind of like the apple falling on the head moment to create the math that in physics, right? So there are tools within their Oracle Academy called Oracle Academy Bytes that allow you to work in different formats, VM, cloud, and lecture-based. Not that lecture is independent, but they have lectures that are in there for some of the materials. So you have different ways to do it. One of the things that I like is that the lectures they have in there on AI and machine learning are really very simple. What I like to say is there's enough Greek to order Mediterranean food. You just have to understand how to create a tip, basic percentages. You go into a little bit of logarithmic probability, but that's as deep as it goes. Some students have never seen a summa, but that's simply a for loop, right? So they can actually see how these things tie together. Was there anything else there? No, I already mentioned that. So let me go over to that example from one of my students, Stephen Foster, who graciously is allowing me to use his example. I want to play that. I think one control is covering up the other, so give me just 1 second here. There we go.
Pizza King AI. So this is the beginning of it, you know, just simply adding these intents and within.
So I'm going to turn off the audio for this for a little bit, but what he's doing is creating attributes and entities that can work with different things. And an intent is where he's at right here, where those intents are used to say, I want to order a pizza, cancel a pizza, have a complaint. And there's not really coding back here, but there is a structure that has to be followed. It's much like Python in the way the structure works, that it will, it's very space specific.
Video to be about 5 minutes long, but I'll try to make it that long. But the AI itself is relatively simple, so see how much I can get into it. And so I'll just start out with basic, not being too descriptive. I want to order a pizza. All right. Okay, let's get that.
All right, so I'm going to pause that and pause the video for just a second. What's happening here is that the AI assistant, the digital assistant, responding based upon the intents and entities that were set up and asking for more information that might be missing. So there's a flow to it, not a flow chart per se, but a flow that can be done in a disconnected way. And then it's going to ask questions based upon the flow to fill out, okay, you want a pizza, how big is it? What other items might you want when you want to have it delivered? And some of the things that happens back here that you'll see as it goes along here a little bit is that it will have what it thinks the intent will be, as well as you can see it in JSON. So as you make those transactional or the transition from talking about how does this work from a user interface working on the relationship models to how does the back end object modeling work, you can have those conversations as well. And this student, so it's showing it believes based upon what he typed in here, he really means to order a pizza. It's not for canceling or for a complaint. So depending upon what the natural language processing is doing from the initial discussion or whatever they typed in there, it will make a decision based upon that using natural language processing, but you could use your own models. The student who built this tool, when it's asking back and forth, he's typing in time, and you can do it in a number of different ways, and it will adapt until you finally get to your result of what you want. That it took him about 3 hours to build this, right? With no prior knowledge, no prior programming knowledge. He did come from my database program, which is more on data administration and how to build a database system, but he had he had computing logic, but that was it, no actual programming. So I'm gonna stop that one there. So that's one of the things that I really love from Oracle Academy. From AWS Academy and AWS Educate. Those are two separate entities from AWS. Both of them have advantages and disadvantages when it comes to AI in particular. And so, and machine learning, because they don't have as much of a focus in AI at this point, but they do really have a focus on machine learning. And so AWS Educate, the general overview between the two is AWS Educate, there's no set curricula for you to work with, but you have an open environment. Whereas AWS Academy, the environment is set up, you have a curricula, and you don't really have the general availability to create custom projects. So when it comes to machine learning, I'm actually working these two in together so that we're using some of the curricula here from AWS Academy, and then as far as building out projects, they're using AWS Educate. There is some difficulty, whereas the Oracle Cloud, the difficult part is getting set up in the system, but it works beautifully. AWS Educate and Academy, because of how it's curated for you, can have a lot of issues. And so every time that I run it, even from one week to the next, there's always a new issue. So I want to say it's not simple, right? But as you get into working with unstructured data and moving to those unsupervised concepts, this is a tool that would work more in the third or fourth semester, and realize that whatever you do, it's likely to change next week. And that's partly because of the underlying Python code that changes and the way it's sourced together from GitHub. There are so many different components to how that works. Even SageMaker itself went to SageMaker 2.0 this summer, but AWS's official tutorials are still based on AWS 1.0. The major difference is they added additional attributes to the entity. So an attribute went another dot layer deeper. And so a lot of the code that's out there is broken. You have to go back and fix it. There's also access issues with making sure that you have proper access to sometimes the SageMaker buckets, not SageMaker, the S3 buckets, or the SageMaker instances, right? So I've most recently, I had issues on the Educate side with the machine learning instance, being able to use the instance, not to create the training set, but to actually implement it. And then AWS Academy, it's been stuck with actually having access to the S3 bucket to even build your training set. So that's most of the things that work in there, but the machine learning parts of that is something they're still trying to tweak out. So I see there's some other chat maybe popping up here. Okay, great. So I talked about that. All right, so if I look at, let me see, this is probably the easier way. Get out of that there. And I go to AWS Educate. I'll start with Educate. It's more the free form. When you go to sign into it, just go to awseducate.com, sign up as an educator. You'll know you're signed up as an educator because it will change up here in your address to educator. If you're a student, it will say student. And so if you're logged in as an educator, and it might take a week to get set up here as well, sometimes longer. For students, though, they can be set up in a matter of sometimes minutes. It's very quick to add students because you add classrooms in here and request them. If you create a classroom with $50 or less, then it's set up usually within a matter of minutes and the students have access very quickly. For SageMaker and machine learning, though, you have to request a $300 account. You're really going to need that kind of credit available, and it's all free. They're granting it to you. But you have to create SageMaker pilot. I probably would need to connect you with the right people at AWS just to make sure they're watching it, because it doesn't work smoothly on creating this access. It's a pilot area for them. It was built into it, but in September they decided to change how that works, and it's in flux. It does work nicely when it does work, and the fact that you have a console here that you can see for each student, you can change between different classes and students. And then you can look at their individual consoles. You're going into their actual console. In this case, I'm looking at my starter account through here, but I can go between different accounts and be in their actual console, work in the same environment they're working in. I use that for Python and other things, not just for this AI concept. There are some additional resources. If you click on professional resources and go to Cloud Career Pathways down here, That will get you to the educator pathways. And there's machine learning scientist. Machine learning scientist does have some material here. It's mainly videos and content. There's really not exercises to work through in here, but it can be good for an introductory course, even like an introductory computer science course on AI concepts. You could use the materials from here to build that out. What they've got in AWS Educate, to be an educator in here, you would sign up through AWS Academy. Sorry, not AWS Educate, but AWS Academy. You sign up through AWS Academy as an educator, and then you will need to get at least one certification to be able to use the materials in your course. Most get the cloud practitioner, and then they verify that you have passed a course related to the courses that you went over here if you're doing some of these extra specialties. These are not certifications, but they are badges. And so for the purpose of this discussion, I'm focused on machine learning. And within there, you can go to resources in general. You click on the LMS. You see I've got several different LMSs, not LMS, but courses listed in a Canvas-based LMS. And then there is the Machine Learning Foundations for Educator. It works a little differently in that it's also using Vocarium, just like Educate is, to provide the services to students. But when you go into it, there are particular lessons and demos that you can do for a transaction. So if I were to go to machine learning with pipeline with SageMaker, I would go into a lab. And within here, I would start the lab, and it'll take a while. Once it's done, it'll send me a message saying it's ready. And I click on AWS, and that will take me to the AWS console, and it works the same as before. But I'm very limited in what I can do within that lab, basically running right through the exercises here. So it's got some great materials to get people started, but when they want to do their own thing, this Educate interface doesn't work great for that. I'm sorry, Academy interface. You need to use Educate to actually make that work. Let me come back to here. There are a lot of jobs out there. Depending upon who you listen to, the last NSF conference, for the NSF ATE conference, they talked about AI and the need of 75 million jobs being replaced by 123 million AI enhanced jobs by 2025. That doesn't mean we're going to have 123 million people creating AI tools. What it means is people using AI to enhance their abilities, just like I'm using glasses to be able to see. I'm not building glasses, I'm just using them. Where are those technician jobs now? That's been part of the difficulty as we lead towards degrees and certifications to make that work. There is interest from the NSF to build that out. They've spent 7 research centers with 250 million grants, more on the bachelor's and graduate level, but Del Mar College out of Corpus Christi is a part of one of those for weather. And I'm pleased to be talking with them about how we can work together to build out the courses. I also have an NSA Cybersecurity Workforce Grant, meaning that the funding is from the National Security Agency, and there is a track in there on AI for cybersecurity. So there's a lot of opportunities to help us get there. AWS and Oracle are thinking about how do we create roles that have it titled to have an AI technician and then machine learning technicians, which are different, to make that work. And even discussions within AI in general education, the arts, English professors. So one of the ways that we're using it at our college is PackBack. PackBack is a tool that uses AI to provide enhanced discussion. So students are given a curiosity score, not just is it something they wrote, is it something well written, is it grammatically and syntactically correct, but is it something that's going to arouse curiosity in others? Zoom and PowerPoint often use AI. I could have turned on AI within this PowerPoint. I find it distracting to put the closed captioning in here unless I know somebody needs the closed captioning, but we can do that in real time. Deep Lens is something that they were shipping out. If you can see on the camera here, Deep Lens is a product, works okay, good in concept, but it doesn't work on modern Wi-Fi networks. You have to have an older Wi-Fi security thing. There's a lot of issues around opening up security properly, where it's either wide open or it's not open at all that we're still trying to work through on some of these things, in particular with AWS. There's Deep Racer. So they want to help people fund these deep racing, so automated driving competitions, a great fun way to get involved. I've been talking with Google, IBM, Watson, Salesforce, Einstein. I have relationships with each of those companies, but I've not found them so far to be anything of use to work in the classroom. I'd love to hear if someone has. I'm not trying to promote just Oracle and AWS. They have just been great partners over the years to help find a way to make it work. We do, like I mentioned, the NSA cybersecurity workforce training. I do need more instructors. I could use some help building out some of these courses. And we have training available. It pays well. If you're interested, you can go to cwct.us. That will then forward you to the Purdue Northwest site that's a little bit longer. But Purdue Northwest is the main entity with that. We're the sub-entity, and I'm the person hiring the instructor trainers through that consortium with Purdue, the University of Tennessee, and the University of North Carolina. And we're looking to expand that to other community colleges and universities to expand deeper levels of instruction of AI within cybersecurity in particular throughout the country. So if you have interest, please let me know, or check us out at that website. Any questions? I know that was a lot, right?
Anybody have any questions for Matthew? You can put in the chat box. That's an option. We'll have a couple minutes left here. Any questions you can pop up. Now, as you're thinking of your questions, we do have a quick survey, 5 questions. It's very painless. Just kind of hear about what your thoughts were on this. I'm putting the chat box right there. So if you would take a moment to click on that, answer those 4 or 5 questions, would be great.
So how do you begin?
Yeah,
right?
go ahead. Yeah.
So to begin, I would suggest starting with AWS Academy, AWS Educate, and Oracle Academy for all those. So it's academy.oracle.com for the Oracle Academy one. For each of those, sign up to get access, because that will take a couple of weeks, right? If you're interested in getting training, I know, Mark, we've started talking about that. We've done something at WotC in the Western Coast before last summer. I also have training that I'll have available for instructors in the summer, possibly fall, for this, for those that might be interested in supporting the grant.
Do you create your own labs in Vocarium? That was a question.
So in Vocarium, within AWS Educate, yes, you have free reign within what you are allowed to do as far as like what you're able to have access to. AWS Academy, it's very limited in what you can do with the labs, but in Educate, as long as you have permission to use those resources, you can basically use them however.
Any other final questions before we adjourn? We covered a lot in half an hour. So someone says, took our school 6 months to get AWS Academy approved. So if you think you want to use AWS the next couple of years, get the ball rolling now.
It can, but if you find that, I have somebody who can get you approved usually the next day. Now that depends upon within your institution, right? That's maybe a separate subject. Your institution may hold it up, right? But if it's on the AWS side, I can help get you in touch with the people to move that through faster. And if your administration has questions, I'm happy to help field those questions too.
Okay, everyone. Well, thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Matthew, for your expertise and your presentation. Those who are asking, yes, we're going to put this recording on our YouTube channel. So once it's ready, we will let everybody know that's out there, so you can watch it again and share it with your colleagues. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good afternoon.